Royal protocol shattered. The explosive awards ceremony that has Denmark's monarchy on edge, Queen Mary's defiant move exposed. Welcome to BNews. 1. The moment that stopped Denmark cold. What happens when a modern queen breaks centuries of royal tradition in front of thousands of witnesses, and the entire monarchy holds its breath? On October 27, 2025, at precisely 3:47 p.m. Central European Time, Queen Mary of Denmark did something that sent shockwaves through the royal halls of Copenhagen and ignited a firestorm of speculation across every major news outlet from London to Tokyo. As King Frederik X and Queen Mary arrived at Værket, a cutting-edge cultural venue in Copenhagen's emerging creative district, to present the prestigious Royal Couples Awards, nobody in attendance could have predicted that this seemingly routine royal engagement would transform into one of the most talked-about moments in modern Danish monarchy history. The award ceremony, established to recognize extraordinary contributions to Danish society, arts, and humanitarian causes, has been a cornerstone of royal duty since its inception in 2016. Yet what transpired during those 2 hours at Værket has royal watchers, constitutional experts, and millions of fascinated observers across the globe asking the same burning question: is the Danish monarchy on the verge of its most significant transformation in decades, or are we witnessing the carefully orchestrated evolution of a royal institution desperately trying to remain relevant in an increasingly skeptical, democratized world? The answer, as we'll reveal in this comprehensive investigation, is far more complex and explosive than anyone initially imagined. Before the ceremony even began, insiders at the Danish royal court were already whispering about tensions behind the palace walls, tensions that have been building since King Frederik's controversial ascension to the throne in January 2024 following Queen Margrethe II's stunning abdication. Now, nearly 22 months into their reign, King Frederik X and Queen Mary are navigating treacherous waters that could redefine not just Danish royalty, but the entire concept of modern European monarchy in the 21st century. If you want the complete, unfiltered truth about what really happened at Værket and why this matters far beyond Denmark's borders, you need to hit that subscribe button right now. BNews brings you investigative royal coverage that goes deeper than the official press releases and palace-approved narratives. Smash that like button, turn on notifications, and get ready for the most comprehensive analysis of the Royal Couples Awards ceremony that the mainstream media refuses to give you. Let's dive into the story that everyone is talking about but few truly understand. The ceremony that changed everything, inside Værket's walls. Værket, for those unfamiliar with Copenhagen's rapidly evolving cultural landscape, represents everything modern Denmark aspires to be: innovative, inclusive, progressive, and unapologetically forward-thinking. Located in the Kodbyen district, once home to the city's meat-packing industry and now transformed into a vibrant hub of galleries, restaurants, and creative spaces, Værket itself is a renovated industrial building that has been converted into one of Scandinavia's most sought-after venues for events that matter. The choice of this location for the Royal Couples Awards was not accidental, it was a deliberate statement. Traditional royal ceremonies in Denmark have historically taken place within the formal confines of Christiansborg Palace, Amalienborg Palace, or other venues steeped in centuries of monarchical history and rigid protocol. By selecting Værket, the royal court was signaling something important. This monarchy understands that to survive, it must evolve. It must meet the people where they are, both literally and figuratively. The venue's industrial aesthetic, exposed brick walls, soaring ceilings with visible steel beams, polished concrete floors, and avant-garde lighting installations, created a stark contrast to the formal attire and ceremonial traditions that King Frederik X and Queen Mary brought with them. As the approximately 350 invited guests began arriving at 2:30 p.m. on that crisp October afternoon, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. The guest list itself told a story of modern Denmark: tech entrepreneurs who have put Danish innovation on the global map, climate activists fighting for environmental justice, artists whose work challenges societal norms, educators revolutionizing how Danish children learn, healthcare workers who became heroes during the pandemic years, and refugees who have successfully integrated into Danish society and are now giving back to their adopted homeland. This was not your grandmother's royal ceremony with aristocrats and dignitaries in formal rows. This was Denmark in 2025, diverse, dynamic, and demanding that even its ancient institutions prove their continued relevance. The ceremony was scheduled to begin at 3:30 p.m., with King Frederik X and Queen Mary making their entrance after the guests were seated. Security was notably visible but not oppressive, with Danish police and royal protection officers maintaining a careful balance between ensuring safety and preserving the accessible atmosphere that modern Danish royalty has worked hard to cultivate. The media presence was substantial, with over 40 credentialed journalists representing outlets from across Scandinavia, Europe, and international news organizations. What none of them knew as they set up their cameras and checked their equipment was that they were about to document something extraordinary. Queen Mary, the Australian who became Denmark's most fascinating royal. To understand the significance of what happened at Værket, we must first understand Queen Mary herself, a woman whose journey from Tasmania to the throne of Denmark reads like a modern fairy tale, yet whose reality has been far more complex and challenging than any storybook romance could capture. Born Mary Elizabeth Donaldson on February 5, 1972, in Hobart, Tasmania, she grew up about as far from European royalty as geographically possible. Her father, John Donaldson, was a Scottish mathematics professor who had emigrated to Australia, and her mother, Henrietta, was an executive assistant. Mary's upbringing was solidly middle class, rooted in academic achievement, athletic pursuits, and the egalitarian values that define Australian culture. She attended the University of Tasmania, earned a degree in commerce and law, and embarked on a career in advertising and marketing, working in Melbourne and Edinburgh before that fateful meeting that would change everything. The story of how Mary met then Crown Prince Frederik during the 2000 Sydney Olympics has been told countless times: the chance encounter at the Slip-In pub in Sydney's Darling Harbour, the Crown Prince's incognito status that Mary claims she didn't discover until later in the evening, the long-distance courtship that followed as Frederik returned to Denmark and his royal duties while Mary continued her life in Australia. Their relationship navigated the treacherous waters of intense media scrutiny, the enormous cultural adjustment Mary faced in transitioning from laid-back Australian to formal European princess-in-waiting, and the linguistic challenge of learning Danish well enough to win over a nation that was initially skeptical of this foreign woman who had captured their crown prince's heart. Their engagement was announced on October 8, 2003, and their wedding on May 14, 2004, was a spectacular affair that captivated Denmark and introduced the world to a new kind of European princess, one who brought no aristocratic lineage, no political alliances, no dynastic connections, only herself, her intelligence, her warmth, and her genuine commitment to her adopted country. Over the following 2 decades, Mary transformed from nervous newcomer to confident crown princess, earning respect through her dedication to causes including domestic violence prevention, mental health awareness, social vulnerability, and children's welfare. She learned to speak fluent Danish with only a slight accent, gave birth to 4 children who represent the future of the Danish monarchy: Crown Prince Christian, Princess Isabella, and twins Prince Vincent and Princess Josephine, and carefully crafted a public persona that balanced royal dignity with relatable authenticity. When Queen Margrethe II shocked the nation by announcing her abdication on December 31, 2023, during her traditional New Year's Eve address, citing health concerns and a desire to pass the torch to the next generation, Mary's preparation for queenship accelerated dramatically. On January 14, 2024, Frederik ascended to the throne as King Frederik X, and Mary became Queen Mary, making history as the first Australian-born queen consort of any European nation. The weight of the crown: Frederik and Mary's turbulent first 22 months. The reign of King Frederik X and Queen Mary has been anything but smooth, and understanding the context of challenges they've faced is essential to grasping the significance of what occurred at the royal couple's awards ceremony. From the moment Frederik assumed the throne, questions about his readiness, his temperament, and his vision for the monarchy have followed him like shadows. Unlike his mother, Queen Margrethe II, who ruled for 52 years with intellectual gravitas, artistic sensibility, and an almost mythical connection to Danish cultural identity, Frederik has struggled to define his own monarchical identity separate from his mother's towering legacy. Rumors of friction between Frederik and Mary have persisted for years, despite official denials from the royal court. In November 2023, just weeks before the abdication announcement, Spanish and British tabloids published photographs of Frederik in Madrid, appearing in compromising proximity to Mexican socialite Genoveva Casanova, sparking intense speculation about the state of the royal marriage. While both Frederik and Genoveva vehemently denied any inappropriate relationship, and the Danish palace issued stern statements condemning the malicious rumors, the incident cast a shadow over what should have been a celebratory transition period. The Danish public, generally respectful of royal privacy, found itself divided between those who dismissed the photos as innocent and meaningless, and those who questioned whether the future king's judgment and discretion were suited to the demands of sovereignty. When the abdication was announced just 6 weeks later, some observers couldn't help but wonder if Queen Margrethe's decision was influenced by concerns about her son's personal conduct and the potential scandal threatening the monarchy's reputation. Once Frederik and Mary became king and queen, new pressures emerged. Denmark, like many European nations, is experiencing growing republican sentiment, particularly among younger generations who question the relevance and cost of maintaining a monarchy in the 21st century. A poll conducted by Megaphone for Politiken and TV2 in March 2025 revealed that support for the monarchy had dropped to 77% from a high of 82% during the final years of Margrethe's reign, a seemingly small decrease that nonetheless represents hundreds of thousands of Danes reconsidering the institution's value. Economic concerns have intensified this scrutiny, with critics pointing to the annual appropriation of approximately 112 million Danish kroner, about 15 million euros, from taxpayers to fund the royal household's activities, properties, and staff. In an era of economic uncertainty, rising living costs, and debates about wealth inequality, every krona spent on royal ceremonies, travel, and maintenance is subject to public examination. Frederik and Mary have attempted to respond to these pressures by positioning themselves as the people's monarchs, more accessible, more contemporary, more engaged with real-world issues facing ordinary Danes. They've emphasized environmental sustainability, with Frederik speaking passionately about climate change and Denmark's renewable energy leadership. They've championed mental health awareness, with Mary's long-standing advocacy in this area taking on new prominence. They've supported Danish businesses and innovation, attempting to position the monarchy as an asset in Denmark's global competitiveness rather than an expensive anachronism. The Royal Couples Awards. More than just ceremony. The Royal Couples Awards, formerly known as Kronprinsparets Priser, when they were established in 2016 during Frederik and Mary's time as Crown Prince and Crown Princess, represent one of the most significant ways the Danish monarchy attempts to demonstrate its ongoing relevance and connection to contemporary society. The awards were created with explicit goals to recognize and celebrate individuals and organizations making extraordinary contributions to Danish society, to shine a spotlight on innovative solutions to social challenges, to inspire others through the examples of the honorees, and to position the royal family as champions of positive change rather than mere ceremonial figureheads. The awards are distributed across several categories that reflect the priorities Frederik and Mary have championed throughout their public lives. The Social Innovation Award, recognizing initiatives that address social challenges through creative, sustainable solutions. The Culture Award, honoring artistic and cultural contributions that enrich Danish life and promote Danish culture internationally. The Young Researcher Award, supporting promising academics whose work has potential for significant societal impact. And the Special Award, given at the royal couple's discretion to individuals or organizations whose contributions don't fit neatly into other categories but deserve recognition. The selection process is rigorous and deliberately insulated from direct royal influence to maintain credibility. A committee of respected figures from various sectors, academia, business, social services, arts, and civil society, reviews nominations, conducts interviews and site visits when appropriate, and ultimately presents recommendations to the royal court. While Frederik and Mary have input, particularly for the special award category, the process is designed to ensure that winners genuinely represent excellence and impact rather than royal favoritism. Since their inception, the awards have recognized remarkable individuals and initiatives: a social entrepreneur who created job opportunities for refugees and immigrants facing employment discrimination, educators who revolutionized STEM education in underprivileged communities, artists whose work addressed Denmark's colonial history and contemporary questions about Danish identity, climate activists who mobilized youth engagement in environmental policy, healthcare innovators who improved mental health services for adolescents, and many others whose work might otherwise go unrecognized despite its profound impact. For Frederik and Mary, the awards serve multiple strategic purposes. They provide concrete evidence of the monarchy's positive contribution to society beyond ceremonial functions. They create opportunities for meaningful engagement with inspiring people working at the forefront of social progress. They generate positive media coverage that counterbalances critical narratives about royal cost and relevance. And they allow the royal couple to align themselves visibly with values, innovation, social justice, sustainability, cultural enrichment, that resonate with modern Danish society, particularly younger generations whose support for the monarchy cannot be taken for granted. The 2025 ceremony was particularly significant because it marked the first time the awards would be presented by Frederik and Mary as king and queen rather than crown prince and crown princess, elevating the event's prestige and symbolic importance. October 27, 2025, the day begins. October 27, 2025, dawned clear and crisp in Copenhagen, with autumn's golden light casting the city in that particularly beautiful Scandinavian glow that photographers and artists cherish. The temperature hovered around 12 degrees Celsius, cool enough to require coats but pleasant for the crowds of Copenhageners going about their Monday routines, commuting to work on bicycles that outnumber cars in the city center, stopping at bakeries for morning pastries and coffee, navigating the efficient metro system that connects the city's diverse neighborhoods. For most residents, it was an ordinary day, but within the walls of Amalienborg Palace, the official residence of the Danish royal family, preparations for the evening's ceremony had been underway since early morning. Queen Mary's schedule, meticulously planned by her private secretaries and coordinated with the king's team, began at 7:30 a.m. with breakfast with her 4 children before they departed for school, a routine she has fiercely protected despite the demands of queenship, determined that her children experience as much normalcy as possible while growing up in the extraordinary circumstances of royal life. Crown Prince Christian, now 19 years old and increasingly involved in royal duties as he prepares for his eventual role, Princess Isabella, 17 in navigating the challenges of adolescence under intense public scrutiny, and the 12-year-old twins, Vincent and Josephine, still enjoying the relative privacy that comes with being younger royals, all were sent off with maternal attention before Mary's official duties consumed her day. Her morning included briefings about the ceremony's honorees, reviewing their backgrounds, achievements, and the reasons for their selections so that her interactions with them would be informed and genuine rather than perfunctory. She studied their names, their organizational affiliations, personal details that would allow her to connect meaningfully during conversations, a skill she has honed over 2 decades of public engagements where genuine connection is both expected and necessary for maintaining the monarchy's human touch. Her communications team reviewed the media strategy for the event, discussing key messages to emphasize, potential questions from journalists, and how to navigate any unexpected situations that might arise. Her stylist presented options for the evening's attire, understanding that Mary's fashion choices are scrutinized intensely and carry symbolic weight. Every color, designer, accessory, and styling detail will be analyzed for meaning, criticized or praised, and potentially influence public perception of the event's success. Meanwhile, King Frederik was engaged in his own preparations, including meetings with his private secretary regarding upcoming state visits, discussions about his schedule for the following weeks, and his own briefing about the awards ceremony. The relationship between Frederik and Mary, according to palace insiders who spoke to BNews on condition of anonymity, has been characterized by professional cooperation overlaying personal distance. They fulfill their public duties with coordinated efficiency, present a united front at official events, and maintain the appearance of a solid partnership, but the warmth and spontaneous affection that characterized their earlier years has been notably absent from public interactions in recent months, fueling ongoing speculation about the true state of their marriage. The journey to Værket, royal transit under scrutiny. At 2:45 p.m., King Frederik X and Queen Mary departed Amalienborg Palace for the short journey to Værket in the Kodbejen district. The choice of transportation, a royal vehicle rather than one of the more ceremonial carriages, reflected the event's modern character and the couple's effort to present themselves as contemporary rather than antiquated. The route took them through Copenhagen's historic center, past the colorful Nyhavn harbor with its iconic 17th-century townhouses now housing restaurants and bars, through areas of medieval architecture standing alongside cutting-edge contemporary design, and into the grittier, more industrial Vesterbro district where Kodbejen represents urban renewal and cultural transformation. The approximately 15-minute journey was closely monitored by security services, with police securing key intersections and plainclothes protection officers positioned strategically along the route. For ordinary Copenhageners who happened to notice the royal motorcade passing, reactions varied. Some stopped to wave enthusiastically, embodying the traditional Danish affection for their royal family. Others continued with their activities, barely glancing up, representing the growing indifference particularly prevalent among younger urban residents, and a small number made gestures of disapproval or disrespect, reflecting the minority but vocal Republican sentiment that has grown in recent years. The Danish media, particularly tabloids like BT and Se og Hør, had positioned photographers along the route, hoping to capture candid images of the king and queen during the transit. These photographers, veterans of royal coverage, know how to read body language and capture moments that reveal more than official portraits ever could. The angle of a glance, the proximity or distance between the royal couple, genuine smiles versus formal expressions, all provide grist for the analysis mill that follows every royal appearance. As the royal vehicle approached Varket at approximately 3:05 p.m., the scene outside the venue illustrated the event's significance and the curious tensions surrounding modern royalty. A designated press area was filled with journalists, photographers, and television crews from major Danish outlets including DR, Danish Broadcasting Corporation, TV2, Politiken, and Berlingske, as well as international correspondents from Swedish, Norwegian, German, and British media organizations. A modest crowd of royal watchers and curious onlookers, perhaps 200 people, had gathered behind barriers hoping to catch a glimpse of the king and queen, among them, elderly Danes who remember Queen Margrethe's long reign with nostalgia and maintain almost religious devotion to the royal family, middle-aged admirers particularly of Queen Mary who see her as an inspiring figure of grace and dedication, younger people drawn by curiosity or genuine interest in the awards, honorees rather than royal celebrity, and families with children excited by the spectacle and pageantry. But also present, standing at a deliberate distance from the enthusiastic royal supporters, was a small but vocal group of protesters, approximately 30 individuals holding signs with messages like, "Democracy not dynasty," "No more royal welfare," and "Accountability for all." These protesters, representing Republican organizations that advocate for Denmark's transition to a full parliamentary democracy without a monarchy, have become increasingly visible at royal events over the past 18 months, emboldened by growing public discourse about the institution's future and cost. The entrance. Reading the royal body language. At precisely 3:12 p.m., the royal vehicle pulled up to Varket's main entrance, where a small reception committee awaited, the venue director, representatives from the awards selection committee, and royal household staff who coordinate these events with military precision. As King Frederik X emerged from the vehicle, photographers, cameras fired in rapid succession, capturing his appearance in minute detail for immediate analysis. The king, 56 years old and showing the weight of 22 months of sovereignty in his expression, was dressed in a dark blue suit with subtle pinstripes, a choice that balanced formality with contemporary style rather than full military dress uniform that would have emphasized tradition and authority at the expense of accessibility. His body language, according to behavior analysts who later reviewed the footage for BNews, revealed a complex emotional state, shoulders slightly tense suggesting underlying stress, a practiced smile that engaged his mouth but not fully his eyes indicating emotional guardedness, and movements that were controlled and careful rather than relaxed and confident. He paused briefly to wave at the assembled crowd and media, a gesture that seemed dutiful rather than spontaneous, before turning to assist Queen Mary from the vehicle, a traditional chivalrous gesture that carries particular weight in royal protocol where every interaction is choreographed for symbolic meaning. Queen Mary's emergence captured everyone's attention immediately and generated the first wave of commentary that would dominate social media within minutes. At 53 years old, Mary has maintained a striking presence that commands attention without demanding it, and her appearance at Varket demonstrated the careful calculation that goes into every aspect of her public presentation. She wore a stunning deep emerald green dress by Danish designer Claes Everson, a choice rich with significance. Emerald green symbolizes renewal and growth, particularly resonant in the context of awards celebrating innovation and social progress. Selecting a Danish designer rather than international fashion houses demonstrates support for Danish creative industries and deflects criticism about spending on foreign luxury goods, and the dress's modern cut, featuring clean lines and a modest neckline while remaining fashion-forward, balanced royal dignity with contemporary style. Her jewelry was notably understated, small diamond earrings in her wedding ring, conspicuously omitting the elaborate pieces from the royal collection that she might have worn to more formal state occasions. Her hair was styled in soft waves rather than the more severe updos often expected at ceremonial events, and her makeup was natural and glowing rather than heavily formal. Every element of her appearance communicated accessibility and modernity while maintaining the refinement expected of a queen. But what captured the most attention, what would be analyzed frame by frame in the hours following the event, was her body language during those first moments outside Varket. As she stepped from the vehicle and accepted Frederik's offered hand, their interaction was brief and formal, hands clasped for the minimum time necessary before releasing, no lingering touch, no exchanged glance of connection or shared anticipation. Mary's smile as she faced the media and onlookers was warm and genuine, reaching her eyes in a way that Frederik's had not, but notably she immediately turned her attention to the reception committee rather than sharing a moment with her husband, creating visible physical distance between them as they began moving toward the venue entrance. Inside Varket, the ceremony begins. The interior of Værket had been transformed for the occasion into a space that seamlessly blended its industrial heritage with the elegance required for a royal ceremony. The main hall, a vast open space with those characteristic soaring ceilings and exposed infrastructure, had been arranged with approximately 350 seats in a gentle arc facing a raised platform where the king and queen would preside and where the honorees would receive their awards. The seating arrangement itself was deliberately democratic. No hierarchical rows with the most important guests at the front and lesser attendees relegated to the back, but rather a configuration that suggested equality among all attendees. Danish and royal flags provided traditional ceremonial touches, but they were interspersed with contemporary art installations that spoke to the venue's cultural mission and the innovative spirit the awards celebrate. Lighting design was sophisticated, creating warmth and focus while highlighting the space's architectural features. As King Frederik and Queen Mary entered the hall at 3:28 p.m., preceded by their security detail and accompanied by the royal court-martial who oversees ceremonial protocol, the assembled guests rose to their feet in traditional respect, though observers noted that the standing ovation was respectful rather than enthusiastic, polite rather than passionate, suggesting the complex relationship between modern Danes and their monarchy. The royal couple proceeded to their designated seats on the platform, elegant but not throne-like chairs that reinforced the contemporary rather than traditional character of the event. The ceremony commenced at 3:33 p.m., slightly behind schedule, with opening remarks from the chair of the awards selection committee, Professor Henrik Lundqvist, a respected sociologist from the University of Copenhagen whose involvement lends academic credibility to the process. Professor Lundqvist spoke eloquently about the importance of recognizing and celebrating those who work tirelessly to make Danish society more inclusive, innovative, sustainable, and just. He emphasized that the honorees represent the best of Danish values, creativity, compassion, responsibility, and determination, and that their achievements remind all Danes of what can be accomplished when talent is combined with purpose. His remarks were carefully crafted to elevate the awards themselves rather than the royal presenters, subtly reinforcing that the monarchy's value lies in its service to the nation rather than its inherent privilege. Following Professor Lundqvist's opening, the awards presentation began with the Social Innovation Award, and this is where the first notable moment occurred, a moment that, while seemingly small, would gain significance as the ceremony progressed and would later be dissected by royal commentators and body language experts. The Social Innovation Award. The first cracks appear. The Social Innovation Award recipient for 2025 was announced as Fatima al-Rashid, a 42-year-old refugee from Syria who arrived in Denmark in 2015 during the migration crisis that tested European unity and compassion. Fatima's story is both heartbreaking and inspiring. She fled Aleppo with her 3 children after her husband was killed in the civil war, endured the dangerous journey across the Mediterranean, spent months in refugee camps, and ultimately was granted asylum in Denmark where she faced the monumental challenge of rebuilding her life in an unfamiliar culture with an incomprehensible language. What makes Fatima's story extraordinary is not just her personal resilience but what she has created to help others facing similar challenges. Recognizing that refugee women often face particular difficulties in integrating into Danish society, language barriers, cultural isolation, limited employment opportunities, trauma from their experiences, and the overwhelming responsibility of caring for children while navigating a foreign system, Fatima founded Broer Bridges, a nonprofit organization that connects refugee women with Danish mentors, provides language learning in supportive environments, offers job training and placement services, creates community spaces where women can share experiences and support each other, and advocates for policies that facilitate integration while respecting cultural identities. In just 5 years, Broer has served over 1,200 refugee women, achieved an 78% employment placement rate, far exceeding typical integration program outcomes, and has been studied by policymakers across Europe as a model for effective, compassionate refugee support. Fatima's selection for the Social Innovation Award was both obvious and controversial. Obvious because her achievement objectively meets every criterion the award seeks to recognize. Controversial because immigration and refugee policy remains one of Denmark's most divisive political issues. Denmark has implemented some of Europe's strictest immigration policies in recent years, including controversial measures like the jewelry law, allowing authorities to confiscate assets from asylum seekers, the revocation of Syrian refugees' temporary residence permits, and policies aimed at reducing the number of non-Western residents in certain neighborhoods. These policies have divided Danish society between those who view them as necessary protections of Danish culture and resources, and those who condemn them as xenophobic and contrary to humanitarian values. By honoring Fatima, the royal couple's awards were making a statement, whether intentional or not, about which side of this divide represents the best of Danish values. As Fatima's name was announced in a video presentation showcasing her work and impact played on large screens, the audience reaction was mixed. Enthusiastic applause from many attendees, particularly younger guests and those working in social services, but notably subdued response from others, and one elderly man in the third row who conspicuously remained seated rather than joining the standing ovation. This small gesture of protest would later be identified by Danish media as Erik Svensson, a retired politician from the Danish People's Party known for his hardline stance on immigration. Queen Mary's defining moment, breaking protocol. What happened next has become the most analyzed and debated moment of the entire ceremony. According to traditional protocol for such events, King Frederik, as the reigning monarch and senior royal, would present the award to Fatima, offer formal congratulations with a handshake, perhaps exchange a few brief words, and then return to his seat while Queen Mary offered her own congratulations. This established protocol serves multiple purposes. It reinforces the hierarchy and authority structure of the monarchy, ensures orderly ceremony flow, and maintains the formal dignity expected at official royal events. However, as Fatima approached the platform to receive her award, visibly emotional and clutching the hands of her two teenage daughters who had been invited to accompany her for this moment, Queen Mary did something unexpected. She rose from her seat before the king, breaking the established order, and moved quickly to meet Fatima not at the formal presentation point but several steps earlier, closing the physical distance in a gesture that immediately signaled intimacy rather than formality. What happened next unfolded over approximately 90 seconds but seemed to occur in slow motion for the stunned audience and media present. Instead of the expected formal handshake and brief exchange, Queen Mary embraced Fatima in a full, warm hug that lasted several seconds, an embrace that was clearly unrehearsed and spontaneous, driven by genuine emotion rather than choreographed protocol. Fatima, overwhelmed by the moment, the recognition, the journey that had brought her from the ruins of Aleppo to this prestigious honor, began to cry, and Queen Mary, rather than stepping back to maintain royal composure, held her more tightly and was seen speaking softly and at length into her ear, words that were not captured by microphones but whose emotional content was unmistakable. The king, still seated, appeared momentarily uncertain, his expression revealing surprise and perhaps discomfort at the breach of protocol, before recovering his composure and rising to approach the two women. When he reached them, Mary gently released Fatima, but kept one arm around her shoulders as Frederik formally presented the crystal award and certificate. The physical positioning was striking, Mary and Fatima side by side, connected, with Frederik somewhat apart, fulfilling his ceremonial duty but outside the emotional connection that had formed between the two women. After Frederik completed his formal remarks, praising Fatima's remarkable contribution to Danish society, and expressing hope that her work would inspire others to similar service, he returned to his seat. But Mary remained with Fatima, and what followed broke protocol even further. The speech that wasn't supposed to happen. Queen Mary, with her arm still around Fatima's shoulders and facing the audience directly, began to speak, not formal prepared remarks, not the brief acknowledgement that might have been expected, but an impromptu address that lasted nearly 4 minutes and covered territory that royal protocol typically avoids. Speaking in Danish with that slight accent that has become endearing to many Danes as a marker of her own immigrant journey, Mary began by acknowledging Fatima's courage, not just the courage to flee violence and seek safety, but the far more difficult courage to hope, to rebuild, to trust a foreign land and foreign people to offer the chance for a new beginning. She spoke about what she described as the universal experience of finding yourself in a place where nothing is familiar, where language fails you, where the thousand small customs and understandings that make daily life manageable are suddenly opaque, where you must ask for help with things you once handled easily, where people see you as foreign before they see you as human. This was, unmistakably, Mary speaking about her own experience arriving in Denmark from Australia, a comparison that seemed to startle many in the audience who perhaps had never considered that an Australian integrating into Danish society might face some of the same challenges as a Syrian refugee, albeit without the trauma, violence, or systemic barriers that refugees confront. Mary continued, her voice growing more passionate and her prepared royal composure giving way to genuine emotion. Fatima arrived in Denmark with her children, seeking safety and the chance to build a life. She was welcomed by a country that offered refuge, but refuge is not the same as home. Home is built through connection, through understanding, through being valued not for where you come from but for what you contribute. Through Broer, Fatima has given other women what she needed most when she arrived: community, purpose, dignity, and hope. This is not charity. This is not one group helping another less fortunate. This is what we must do for each other to truly be a society rather than simply a collection of individuals sharing geography. The political implications of these words, spoken by the Queen at an official royal event, were immediately apparent to those familiar with Denmark's contentious integration debates. Mary was, whether deliberately or spontaneously, staking out a position on one of the nation's most divisive issues, a position that contradicted policies implemented by democratically elected governments and supported by significant portions of the Danish population. The Danish monarchy is strictly apolitical by constitutional convention. The royal family does not vote, does not publicly endorse political positions, and maintains careful neutrality on controversial policy matters precisely to preserve the monarchy's position above partisan politics. The audience reacts, a nation divided in real time. As Queen Mary's impromptu speech continued, the reactions throughout the venue created a visible map of Denmark's cultural and political divisions. In the front sections, where many of the attendees were connected to social services, refugee advocacy, and progressive causes, faces showed appreciation, agreement, and emotional connection to Mary's words. Several audience members were crying, moved by the Queen's vulnerability and the explicit validation of their own work and values. In the middle sections, expressions were more mixed, some nodding approval, others looking uncomfortable, a few exchanging glances that suggested surprise or concern at what they were witnessing. In the rear sections, where some more conservative attendees were seated, reactions ranged from polite but reserved attention to visible disapproval, arms crossed, expressions stony, a few people looking down at their programs rather than watching the Queen. The media section was electric with activity, journalists typing frantically on laptops and phones, photographers capturing every moment and expression, television crews ensuring their equipment captured this unexpected development. Everyone present recognized that they were witnessing something significant, something that would generate headlines and analysis for days or weeks to come. On the platform, King Frederik's expression had evolved from surprise to what body language experts would later describe as controlled displeasure. His jaw was visibly tense, his posture had stiffened, and though he maintained the formal pleasant expression required of royalty, his eyes revealed discomfort with what was unfolding. Royal protocol staff positioned around the hall were similarly tense, uncertain whether to intervene somehow to end Mary's speech or to allow it to continue naturally to its conclusion, aware that either choice carried risks. When Mary finally concluded her remarks, thanking Fatima again and embracing her once more before finally allowing the ceremony to proceed, the applause was thunderous from portions of the audience but notably uneven, a standing ovation from approximately two-thirds of attendees while others remained seated or offered only polite, measured applause. The moment crystallized the fundamental challenge facing the Danish monarchy in 2025, how to remain relevant and emotionally connected to the population while maintaining the political neutrality essential to the institution's constitutional position. Mary's speech had undoubtedly created a powerful emotional moment that would resonate deeply with many Danes who share her values regarding immigration, integration, and social solidarity. But it had also potentially alienated those with different views, and more fundamentally, it had ventured into political territory that tradition dictates the monarchy must avoid. The ceremony continued with the presentation of the remaining awards, but the energy in the room had shifted fundamentally. Everyone was processing what had just occurred, analyzing its implications, and wondering if further surprises lay ahead. The remaining awards. Ceremony in the shadow. The Culture Award was presented next to Danish filmmaker and playwright Sophie Grabel, whose work exploring themes of identity, belonging, and the collision between tradition and modernity has earned international acclaim and sparked important conversations within Denmark about its self-image and values. Grabel, 63 years old,